the flock, and if a sheep has an issue, I try my best to help, to guide and to direct and to make sure that the sheep grow, right? And I don't know anything about sheep except for what the Bible says. I've never had sheep, but you want them to be healthy, I'm assuming, and grow that nice fluffy fleece and all that. But I want you to hear me when I say this. I have a wonderful opportunity to be able to talk to you all and to see, understand and hear your struggles and to hear your joys. And I just want to remind you, at the very basis, the very core of our belief, the very foundation of our belief is trusting God. Okay? And so we need to examine our lives on a daily basis and ask ourselves, am I following God? Am I trusting the Lord? Because we are an impatient people. I was talking with, I think it was Spencer and I were on the road the other day, and I was talking about in my childhood, my teenage years, we were a little bit different in our timelines, but we were talking about some things that sped up our lives. And so one of the things that sped up my life was about 7th, 8th grade was when we got our first computer that connected to the internet. And so it was like, holy cow, there's a whole new world out here. And we were talking about how the internet stuff helps and all that. But then Spencer brought up, too, that for one of the things that you all had in maybe your teenage year, or not teenage, your young adult life, I'm trying not to get myself in trouble here, was a microwave. And for me, I think about a microwave and I think, well, I've always had a microwave, and it doesn't make any, sense. I've popping pizza rolls for years. But it was something new and fancy, and it sped up our lives, and it made things easier and whatnot. And so I don't know where I'm going with that point. I had a point, and it's gone now. The bottom line, though, is that we would seek the Lord first, okay, in our faith, in our walk, and trusting the Lord and growing in Him. I really don't know where that point was going. But where the end of my sermon was going to be today was found here in Matthew chapter 6:33, where it says, "Seek first His kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you." Now I know where I was going with it. Sometimes, because of this expedition of our lives, I don't think that's the right word, but the expedient way that we live our lives, I'm making up words here, we want to rush things. And what we're going to see today in the story that I'm going to tell you in 2 Samuel, I want to highlight the length of which David was anointed to be the next king of Israel and the time that he actually became king. And actually, there's a part in between there where he was only partially king. Okay? So from the time that David was anointed by Samuel to be the next king of Israel, 13 years-ish would pass until he is made king over just a portion of the land at Hebron. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. And then it would be almost, again, give or take, 20. It would plus, so we're 13. Now we're going to be 20 years before he becomes king over all of Israel. Where are you going with this, Pastor? Why are you talking microwaves and computers and whatnot? Sometimes in our lives, we want things now. I want my potato in less than a minute. I want my pizza rolls hot and fresh. I want to be able to connect to the internet and order a swimming pool for the backyard on Amazon. We want all this stuff right now. But as we look at the life of David and we see the promise that God gave David to be the next king over Israel, we see that there's a time period in which he has to wait. And not only in that time period does he have to wait, but he also experiences a crazy, and we're going to hear another crazy one today, amount of events that happens. So where am I going with all this? What I'm going with all this is in our lives, we're going to face some crazy stuff. But the Lord knew that we would face these crazy things. And so for us, looking at David's life, I believe the lesson that we can learn from David's faithfulness is to seek God first. That our foundation absolutely has to be based in His Word and His promises. His Word telling us that He is God. He is the Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end. He has created all things. And He has created things for you to do and to those ways to walk in. But it doesn't mean that's going to happen right now. And it doesn't mean there's not going to be a whole lot of crazy in your life. Anybody have crazy in their life right now? But as we go through that, we understand His Word. We understand His promise. Why we're so hyper-focused on you growing in your walk with Christ. Why would we want you to grow? We want you to grow because we want you to be able to stand firm in the midst of persecution, in the midst of other people that don't know Jesus, and tell them adequately how to have a relationship with Him. We want you to grow so that you can tell others. We want you to grow so that you can withstand the storms that will come in walking through this life. And storms come. And we want you to grow because we want you to be in the moment right now. And listen, I get that I'm probably I think I'm still in the lower half of the younger people here. So I get that I haven't lived a long life, almost 40. We get it, you're old. Let's move on. Here's the thing. Can I just say this? That as life goes on, folks, we need to look around at what the Lord has presented to us in the moment. And we need to seek His kingdom right here, right now. Because He has good things for us each and every day. But if we're constantly looking to the next and the next and the next, we're 80 plus years old and we look back on our life. And some may say, Lord, look at what I've done for you. And some may say, what happened? And what I'm trying to say is, seek His kingdom first. Okay? 33 says, seek His kingdom first, kingdom and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you. Jump over to 22, verse 36. The guy says, teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And he said, that's Jesus. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the greatest and foremost commandment. And the second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend the whole law of the prophets. Folks, these are important imperatives. We must love God and we must love our neighbors. We must show the love of Jesus everywhere we go to all people that we encounter. And man, when I read the story of David, these verses pop out to me because David, of all people, had the right to just go on a spree of slaughter. People that just came after him. Saul chased him and tried to pin him to the wall, and other people just doing different things. And we're going to, like I said, in the next few chapters, we're going to see a whole lot of crazy. But David seeks the Lord. And we're going to see that right here in the beginning of this. So if you have your Bibles, we're going to be in 2 Samuel chapter 2. But I want to recap with you, and I want to give you a glossary index. So that was the final point of my sermon. We're going to come back to that in a moment. But I want to recap a little bit, okay? 1 Samuel 16:1 was whenever Samuel anointed David with oil to be the next king of Israel. And in 12 through 13, it says, it talks about David and how ready he is, and he appointed him over that. And it would be 13 years before he would be anointed as a king in Hebron. And we've got that map up there. Yeah. Okay. So this is just going to kind of show you, and you can see in the lighter colors, the different parts of Israel, or the different places that we're going to talk about today. He's going to go to Hebron and be anointed over the Judites. And then you're going to see some more stuff pop up. So that map is just there for your reference. And we're going to talk about Abner and Ishbosheth and all those people. I'm going to give you a character list because there's a lot of people in here with weird names that we need to keep track of. But the recap of what we talked about last week, David lamented over losing Saul and Jonathan. God gave the throne to David. David did not steal the kingdom from Saul. David proved by this by dealing swiftly with Saul's alleged killer and publicly lamenting his personal loss for Saul and Jonathan. An Amalekite came to David at Ziklag and related how he had killed Saul on the Mount Gilboa. Most likely, the Amalekite was fabricating his story in order to receive a reward. But the Amalekite was greeted with David's strongest rebuke. David, who had more cause than anyone to kill the king, had refused to raise his hand against the Lord's anointed. But this pagan slave did not respect the Lord's anointed. David's men executed the Amalekite for his alleged deed. David lamented the deaths of Saul and Jonathan. His sorrowful refrain, "How the mighty have fallen," expressed a tribute to these great men whom David loved and missed. And so when I read that story of David, and I read how David honored these men, even though Saul was troubled, man, he had a lot of issues and tried to kill David multiple times. And yet here he says, how the mighty have fallen. Here his brother Jonathan and his adopted father Saul gone. And he says, how the mighty have fallen. So that brings us into chapter 2 of 2 Samuel. And I want to give you a character list so that you understand who we're dealing with here. First and foremost, you know David. David is the next anointed king over Israel. We have a couple wives of David, which will only increase as we go through the story. Ahinoam, the Jezreelite, and Abigail, who's the widow of Nabal, who is a Calebite. And then also in this story, we're going to see the men of Jabesh Gilead. Jabesh Gilead, those are the men that went in the night, and they, after the Philistines had taken the body of Saul and pinned it to the wall, they went up and they got Saul's body and they buried it. And then we have Abner. Abner would be the commander of Saul's army. Okay, Abner's he's going to show up big time in this story today, as well as Ishbosheth, which is translated Eshbaal, or fire of Baal, or in our terminology, man of shame. This is going to be Saul's son, who's Abner is going to appoint as king. And then we're going to hear about Zeruiah's son. Zeruiah is the sister of David, found in 1 Chronicles 2:16. And she had three sons: Joab, son of Zeruiah, the commander of David's army; Abishai, son of Zeruiah, also commander; and Asahel, the son of Zeruiah, who you need to know is as swift-footed as a gazelle. Nothing anybody's ever said about me. But he was also a commander. And so today, as we jump into this passage, those are the folks that you're going to see kind of pop out. And you're going to see these different locations pop up throughout the story, and just so you kind of have a reference as to where we are in those places. Okay, so here we are. 2 Samuel chapter 2, verse 1 through 4 says this. It says, "Then it came about afterwards that David inquired of the Lord, saying," did you catch that? After all that had happened, after he mourned the loss of Saul, after all this had happened, he says, "Then it came about afterwards that David inquired of the Lord, saying, Shall I go up to one of the cities of Judah? And the Lord said to him, Go up." Excuse me. So David said, "Where shall I go?" And he said, "To Hebron." So David went up there, and his two wives, Ahinoam, the Jezreelite, and Abigail, the widow of Nabal, the Carmelite, or Calebite. And David brought up his men who were with him, each of his household, and they lived in the cities of Hebron. Then the men of Judah came, and there anointed David king over the house of Judah. And they told David, saying, It was the men of Jabesh Gilead who buried Saul. So first and foremost, once again, David seeks the Lord in his decision-making. He knows that he is the next, according to what Samuel had anointed him as king, he is the next rightful ruler of Israel, but he seeks the Lord. He doesn't just go, all right, it's my turn, everybody else is gone. He says, no, Lord, show me, tell me what you want me to do. And the Lord says, go to Hebron. So he goes to Hebron. And there are three factors why this is kind of a good settlement for David. It's one of the largest cities of the refuge. It was the largest city of refuge in this region. It was a Calebite city, and it was a city set aside for Aaronic priesthood. Not ironic, Aaronic, as in Aaron. But let me tell you what a refuge city was in these days. A refuge cities, there's 6 cities. 6 cities are set aside within Israel as cities of refuge. These are places of sanctuary or asylum where a person who unintentionally kills someone may reside without fear of blood revenge until a trial can be held. These cities are discussed in Exodus chapter 21, Numbers 35, Deuteronomy 4, Joshua 20, 1 Chronicles 6. So there's many good reasons why David would make his way to Hebron, why God led him there. There are definitely folks who thought that David had something to do with Saul's death. And you can think about any of the wars that you've learned about in our culture, in our time, that it takes a while for the peace treaty to make it across the battlegrounds, right? And so that's kind of the same thing here, that David is seeking the Lord where he should go, because he ultimately knows that the Lord is going to work it out as he goes. And so he gets up to Hebron, they come up, excuse me, and they anoint him. And he is safe in this place that is a sanctuary city that nobody will take or try to take revenge on him because they think that he had something to do with Saul's death. So David's group settles, and his group could have easily been in the range of 1,000 folks. Okay. And so at this time, we got to remember that David is not recognized as the king of all Israel at the time. Simply just in Hebron over in Judah is David's rule as of right now. He's been anointed there at Hebron. Okay, verse 4 through 7 says, Then the men of Judah came up there, anointed David over the house of Judah, and they told David, saying, It was the men of Jabesh Gilead who buried Saul. Verse 5 says, David sent messengers to them, to the men of Jabesh Gilead, and said to them, May you be blessed of the Lord, because you have shown this kindness to Saul your Lord, and have buried him. Verse 6, Now may the Lord show loving kindness and truth to you, and I also will show this goodness to you, because you have done this thing. Now therefore, let your hands be strong and be valiant, for Saul your Lord is dead, and also the house of Judah has anointed me king over them. And so having reached out to these loyal supporters of Saul's regime, David encouraged them to be strong and brave. Literally, strengthen your hands and become men of power and virtue. He urged them to accept the fact that Saul, their master, was in fact dead, and to move beyond their grief. Though the one who had brought them deliverance and protection was gone, the Lord had raised up another one to take Saul's place. The house of Judah